Caddis Maximus here again, this time with a quick review and overview of, I guess I'd call them small and specialty pullers, as well as puller accessories. And a puller accessory might be something like this. Well, this is a bearing separator. This is an OTC, so if you have a shaft and then there's a bearing that's really close and you're not able to get fingers, such as standard pullers, under the edge of the bearing, this is like a knife, essentially. And you would bolt this in and squeeze it, and you would press down on the bolts until this tapered edge actually gets under the bearing and pops it up a little bit, and then it'll close. And then you have two bolts that you would run through, such as an H-beam puller, a larger version of this, to actually yank the bearing off. And so in certain situations, I already popped this bearing, where the bearing is really close and you can't get the teeth under. You'd use these known as bearing separators to get under those bearings or gears or whatever, to actually be able to pull it off any kind of shafting. Besides bearing separators, we have like steering wheel pullers. These are different from hub pullers because they are usually flat and they're much lighter duty. This is a small forged one, but this steering wheel puller is actually just cast. And if you were to use this under a heavy duty situation, it would just collapse. So that's one thing to be aware of, is there is a difference between hub pullers and steering wheel pullers. And then we have all sorts of specialty pullers here. We have things like this, which is a, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but this one might be used something specialty, such as an air conditioner pulley or something like that. It has a ball bearing on it, and so what it would do is it would thread into what it needs to thread into, and that would hold on to it. And then you would actually hold this and twist this part, and it would yank it out. And then it has a ball bearing surface here, so it doesn't have a lot of friction, but that is actually a special type of puller. We have these kind of pullers, which are actually for replacing certain fittings inside of valves, or it's more of a pusher rather than a puller, but that's the deal, is this threads into the valve and then you twist this up and it would actually push it out. And it's kind of handy when you have all these different weird pullers, because you'll run into a situation and say, oh wow, you know, I have something that might fit. And that's what's nice about these, is they sometimes can be used in situations where you wouldn't expect. This is another kind of unique puller. And I've used this several times. I actually bought it used when it was all damaged. But the nice thing about this is it has these half moons, a large size and a small size. So if you have a real tight recess, like you have to reach down into a bore, you can use, this is the perfect kind of puller to use in that situation, and that's how I've used it. And it just has a metal band that holds the two clamshells in half, and this works great. There's many situations in which these thick arms of the puller just don't fit. You just can't get them down, and there's not enough space, so you'd have to use a clamshell style puller like this to push it out. And then this body just holds against the clamshells, and then of course you push it out. And I've used this to pull bearings out of tightly recessed areas. We have things like valve spring compressors. How you know a valve spring compressor from a puller is sometimes they'll have a weird sheet metal contraption like this to keep the arms steady and the press on top of the spring seat on top of the valve. But the easiest way to tell a valve, something intended as a valve spring compressor, is that the arms won't match up evenly, because they're designed to be hooked onto coils of a spring, and of course the coils of the spring are slightly slanted, so these are designed to where they'll grab on the lower one side of the coil and the other, and then the puller will sit straight. And so that's one thing I wanted to point out, was the fact that spring compressors will have uneven legs, and that's the easiest way to know that's really specifically a spring compressor. Now, we've talked about arm pullers that are kind of like these, where the arms float around, but there are some interesting takes on that design. Here's a two-jaw design, but it has this wedge top, so on a wide portion, as you're pulling, the arms actually are held more securely, and this is a nice style. There's also various small pullers that kind of work similarly. This is a cam action, so you can quickly put it on whatever you're pulling. And then as you twist it tight, it's pushing up on the cam, which is forcing the arms tighter on what you're pulling, and they can be pretty handy. And then there's just various takes. That's a small version. This is a Craftsman. This is a larger version. This Craftsman doesn't have any part number on it. And all these I found used, but I just recognize them as being unique pullers and probably would be handy. And this Craftsman is the same type of design. You can squeeze it, and it's spring-loaded, and then as you do the pulling action, it forces the arms tighter so they don't really slip. You have oddball pullers like this, which is like just a general kind of basic use puller. We have small pullers like this, which is just two arms, so you might put a couple of bolts. This is what I use to pull many things, some harmonic balancers, various pulleys, because it's real convenient, because you just have to find two bolts and washers, and it's small and compact. And then there are other styles like this little Japanese. I don't think this is really intended as a puller. I think it's designed to set pins or something into some apparatus, but I've used it to pull really small bearings out of small motors. And this is another unique take. It's spring-loaded, but they have two long arms, and what makes that convenient is you can actually put it on and off with one hand real conveniently. And I thought that might be handy and to add to other of these spring-loaded puller designs. Anyway, this was just a short little video just kind of displaying the various types of pullers, and if you see them or see weird things that may look like this, or like this, or like this, they're all various styles of pullers, and if you see them used, pick them up, because eventually they will come in handy, and you'll think, oh, I have a particular type of hardware that may actually work for whatever job I'm doing, and these certainly have helped me out, particularly on smaller bearings. Been a real big deal for small apparatuses like, you know, this bearing that's bad on this little stepper motor. Anyway, once again, that's Catus Maximus Review. Please subscribe.